Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. And when I say here, I'm actually in transit at the moment. I had an urgent family matter to deal with abroad outside of Thailand, and I had an opportunity to also spend some time with family over the American Independence holidays. And that's been interesting. But long story short, I am now in transit back to Thailand. But having been outside the kingdom for a little bit of time here, it's given me a little bit of perspective to sort of be able to see or to get a better perspective as to what I see going on in Thailand. And I find it concerning. And frankly, I haven't found things to be this concerning since the darkest hours of the so-called COVID crisis. And we all know how bad that was. And here we are again in my opinion, a situation where I'm starting to really question whether or not certain folks in and around the government, quote unquote, and I'll get into why I'm saying that, quote unquote, have the best interests of the nation of Thailand at heart. And let's go ahead and get into why did I put quotes around the word government? To be clear, for those who don't understand, and I don't like to get overly political on this channel, we like to discuss things from the legal standpoint so that folks, especially foreigners, can have some better insight into what's going on in Thailand. But there are some political ramifications to this. And look, at the end of the day, promulgated law and changes to policy and changes to laws do come about through oftentimes the political process. So, but the reason for the quotation marks around the word government is, to be clear, in a lot of these issues that we're going to be discussing in the rest of this video, and strap in, it is going to be a longer one. The question arises as to whether this is even the government that is making all of these moves, if you will, that is proposing all of these changes to laws regarding, as we'll get into, cannabis, and as well as certain economic considerations that are stemming from the so-called digital wallet. And again, so what am I talking about when we put government in quotes? Well, currently Thailand is operating under a coalition government. There is a constitutionally legitimate government which has been formed in Thailand. It currently exists in the parliament. The parliament is open. The speaker has opened it. Procedurally, Thailand is operating under a legitimate parliament here in the kingdom. That said, the coalition itself, I would say, lacks what we would say in the American vernacular, much akin to, for example, when a president will win an electoral college win, much like the way President Bush, George W. Bush, won the electoral college in 2000, as well as how Donald Trump won the electoral college in 2016. There may be an electoral college win, which is under the American constitutional system, can make for a legitimate president. It is difficult for that president to then turn around and claim that they have anything akin to a major mandate, especially when it comes to things like domestic legislation. While it's not an apples to apples comparison when looking at the current situation of the government in Thailand, I think it is fair to state that while Thailand does have a legitimate parliament, a legitimate constitutionally enshrined parliamentary government presently, I think it's pretty hard to say that there's any major mandate for major legislative changes. And there is a faction of the current coalition, the faction that currently has put forth the current prime minister in Thailand. That faction is operating as if they have some major sweeping broad mandate to make massive changes to the things that had occurred prior to them coming into power. And I don't think most people outside of Thailand or who just have a passing understanding of the Thai system fully comprehend just how big a deal that is. That in fact, no, that the faction of the coalition which is pushing all of these major changes that I really question whether or not these things are in the best interest of the nation overall. I question whether they really have a mandate to begin with to make these changes, because at the end of the day, they didn't win a sweeping majority. They didn't even win the faction that's currently running the prime ministership and many of the ministries in Thailand, including the public health ministry. That faction did not win some major mandate electorally. They were able to form a coalition and thereby form a government, but which is legitimate. No one questions that. But again, does it have a mandate to make these major changes that they're proposing, which will have a tremendous impact overall on Thailand? And let's just jump into this. What are we talking about here? Well, specifically, I first thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Cannabis Set to Return to Illegal Drugs List After Vote. First off, yet again, the media has not fully articulated what is actually going on here. Many people think that this vote was the conclusion, and it is not. And I'll get into that here in a moment. That said, quoting directly, a majority vote was finally reached to put cannabis and hemp back on the narcotics list. However, quoting further, the committee would submit its report to the Office of the Narcotics Control Board for consideration next week. So, to be clear, notwithstanding how the media is currently reporting on this, this is not a done deal. This was just basically an advisory opinion of the committee has been reached. A majority of folks sitting on the committee came to a conclusion regarding what they would advise the board to ultimately do. Okay? So, quoting further, if the Office of the Narcotic Control Board agrees with our conclusion, the next step will be for the Food and Drug Administration to, and then it goes on. But again, what's the cogent point I'm trying to make here is if the Office of Narcotic Control Board agrees with that conclusion, that's the key takeaway there. Okay. Meanwhile, moving over to another article, again, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Health Minister Still Plans to Recriminalize Cannabis, Says Most Agree. Again, and I've talked about this in other videos that we've made. There's been all of this talk about certain polling, and I find a lot of this to be spurious, that many people, there's an overwhelming majority of people that wants to re-illegalize this and go back to the dark ages, effectively, of the so-called war on drugs, where we were putting people into prison for literally offenses related to cannabis, okay? And I don't think anybody agrees that that is a great idea, as evidenced by the fact that it was changed in the first place. That said, quoting directly, Bumjai Thai leader Anutin Chanwirakul was health minister in 2022 and is now interior minister and a deputy prime minister and chairs the Narcotics Control Board. I think that's noteworthy because he was the person that was the major driver behind this change in policy regarding cannabis in the first place, and now he will be ultimately chairing the board, which will make a final determination on this overall issue next week. Again, the media is reporting on this as if it is already a foregone conclusion, as if it's already a done deal. And as you can see, it's far from it, if anything. Now, that said, quoting from another article in the Bangkok Post, article, and tip of the hat to the Bangkok Post, by the way, staying on top of this very well. That said, I sometimes see these headlines, again, that I find to be a little bit disingenuous as far as reporting as if this is already done and not fully articulating that there are further procedural steps that have to be undertaken in order for this reversal to be fully enacted. And even if they do come to a final conclusion, there's still more procedural steps that would have to occur. This is a long way off. As evidence, again, article is titled Pro-Cannabis Groups to Rally at Government House, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. And quoting directly, and they're quoting Prasit Chai Nunwal, Secretary General of the Writing Thai Cannabis Future. And this person notes, quote, the committee's decision is not based on the public's interest and could be an administrative offense. He threatened to file criminal and civil lawsuits against the public health minister, Somsak Tepsutin, and the committee, and mount a public campaign against them. Now, this is noteworthy, I think, because even if this committee, and I find it, we've discussed this at length, first they said, oh, we need to go ahead and pass something through Parliament, and they spent 2 years messing with that, and then when apparently this faction that doesn't really want cannabis to be the way that it currently is or in its current form, when they really didn't get their way, then they turned around and just said, well, we can do it all through the committees. We can just do this by regulation. We can effectively, with the stroke of a pen, without really having the effectively the input of Parliament per se, but just us as bureaucrats, we can just with the stroke of a pen change the nature of cannabis in terms of its legal posture in Thailand. Basically, overnight, we can just call it a narcotic. Well, the problem with that, as pointed out, and as we discussed in other videos, I personally have wondered, and I haven't ever seen this issue discussed. First of all, the delisting of cannabis as a narcotic occurred under emergency powers when the Communicable Diseases Act had been enacted for emergency purposes in response to the so-called COVID pandemic. And the Minister of Public Health had certain extraordinary powers by dint of that emergency decree. This doesn't exist here. And I've asked the question, again, as a lay Thai person, isn't that an issue for the Constitutional Court, whether or not they can just unilaterally say that a plant is overnight a narcotic? Again, it was delisted under emergency powers at the time that the emergency decree was in effect. Now that it's not, can they just turn around and do that? Meanwhile, as brought up by Mr. Nunwal, the issue of being an administrative offense is also a very cogent point as well, because, and I think as we'll see, even if they ultimately are able to do this through basically bureaucratic fiat and just say, because we say so, this is now a narcotic, people were issued licenses under the previous system. So to just come in over the top of them without an enacted law by Parliament, while there are valid licenses still in place, how can that be legal? And as noted, there's probably going to be a number of lawsuits as a result of this overall situation. And in other articles, Mr. Oniton himself pointed out that, yeah, look, what do you do about the people that were all released from jail as a result of the change in policy and law some 2 years ago? You know, what do you do with, you know, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do on the part of the Narcotics Control Board. And then on top of that, they're putting out of business some 7,700 to 8,000 small businesses that, to be clear, already have legally promulgated licenses to sell this product. And then unilaterally, one ministry, like one small group of ministry bureaucrats, some half a dozen people or whatever it is that have voted and in this advisory committee to say, oh, this is now a narcotic again. They just get to unilaterally, or they just get to do that, notwithstanding the fact that people detrimentally relied on getting their own licenses to be able to sell these things and run their own small businesses. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And on top of that, I think, even if they say we've now changed the rules, we've changed the laws, we've made this a narcotic, I think this is going to get caught up in the Thai court system. So what I'm saying is, don't view this as a foregone conclusion at this stage of the game, because there are many, many things that are many other tumblers have to fall together for this to ultimately revert back to the way it was prior to, June 2022. So that's something to keep in mind. Meanwhile, again, this video is not entirely about the issue of cannabis. What's concerning to me is what I'm seeing is more and more, again, going back to, for example, this same faction in the coalition was the one that wanted to go ahead and put Chinese police on Thai streets. And I did a video, a pretty passionate one at the time, discussing that issue. And, and I've noticed more and more there seems to be this push for more Chinese tourists. Meanwhile, it seems like there's a deliberate ignorance to the influx of many Indian tourists that we've seen over the past couple of years, as well as other nationalities. And again, going back to that issue of Chinese police, was that in the best interest of Thailand? Was that the best thing for the nation? I don't think so. Meanwhile, on top of that, from Bangkok Post, BangkokPost.com, article is titled "Digital Wallet Scheme Signs Up Vendors," quoting directly, vendors can use the digital money, and I put money in quotes, to purchase food, beverages, and consumer goods. Products that cannot be purchased using the digital wallet include, and see, this is what we've gotten to, this so-called digital wallet, which, since I've been outside of Thailand the past week or so, 10 days, I've noticed that it's just sort of been glossed over how they even got the funding for this. Bear in mind, as we discussed in prior videos, we're talking about 2 orders of magnitude more liquidity than the current Thai banking system even has. And Thailand is supposed to go into a great deal of debt for this system. And then meanwhile, I've seen this constant push for this constant push of the notion that Thailand needs stimulus, Keynesian stimulus, i.e., government intervention into the economy to inject all this money. And, first of all, my question is, where was all of this concern during the so-called pandemic when all of these businesses were just completely shut down and no one, and that's anyone from the opposition, whatever, seemed particularly to care about those businesses at that time. Now they're saying we need this stimulus, notwithstanding the fact, as we've discussed in other videos, in the first quarter of 2024, we saw a huge boom economically, including a massive increase in consumer spending. And what I find really interesting is this constant refrain of, oh, we need stimulus, is coming from the same people that want to recriminalize a product that within about 6 weeks of being legalized represented a $1 billion market cap industry just within the first 6 weeks of it existing within the Thai economy. As we discussed in other videos, even Time magazine pointed out that Thailand was on a trajectory of seeing the cannabis industry be worth as much as $9 billion US dollars on an ongoing basis. And again, these same people that are saying we need stimulus are also saying, oh, we need to get rid of cannabis, which is something that's entirely new to the economy, operates as a cash crop agriculturally, operates as basically an engine of small business in terms of small retail businesses, also operates as an engine of increasing tourism, as many tourists want to come to Thailand to partake of this product, also increases consumer spending, likely as a result of those tourists coming to Thailand and spending their money in, imbibing on or indulging in said product. Meanwhile, it also has had a massive positive impact on the commercial real estate sector in Thailand, which everybody else around the world's commercial real estate sector is plummeting. For a variety of different reasons, it's plummeting. But meanwhile, Thailand's has held strong. Well, it's held strong because one reason is there's a great deal of demand for retail commercial real estate as a result of having this product legal on the market. Meanwhile, this call for stimulus is attached directly to the notion of this digital wallet scheme, which it's not real money. As I've discussed in other videos, they can control where it is spent. They can control how it is spent. They can even place a time limit on when and where it can be used. So quoting again, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com, digital wallet scheme signs up vendors. Recipients can use the digital money, quote unquote, to purchase food, beverages, and consumer goods. Products that cannot be purchased using the digital wallet include lottery tickets, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, cannabis-related products, or items derived from these substances. Something to think about here is the funding for this stimulus will create the infrastructure for this cashless economic scheme. And if you can't see the writing on the wall, they're going to be able to control what you buy. And if this is put in place, it's going to result in down the road, they're going to be able to not only surveil whatever you buy, but tell you that you can't buy it. If you're trying to buy something with your quote unquote digital money that they don't like, they just won't let you do it. Quoting further, in addition, the handout cannot be used to buy gift cards, cash cards, gold, diamonds, pearls, or to pay off debts, tuition fees, or utility bills, including water, electricity, or telephone charges, or to buy fuel or natural gas. Well, those are things of great use to people in a real sense. What is this digital money supposed to be able to buy? You're going to be able to go in and buy, consumer candy and things like this from a 7-Eleven, or gold. You can't use it to pay off debts, tuition fees, utility bills. These are the things people need help with. They don't need help buying chicken and chiclets from a gas station somewhere. They need help with actual real world goods and services that real money can buy. not some digital wallet fake money. And I'm more passionate about this having been abroad from Thailand for a little while now, and I've gained a great deal of extra perspective on this, watching the country, for example, of my birth and other countries around the world that have gone greatly cashless. And I'm watching the deflationary effect that it is having on the overall economy. It's literally desiccating the economy. The effect is people buy less things because they have less options of things to buy. And that is bad. You want a vibrant economy. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. Well, variety is the spice and the engine of an economy. My point being with this video, and the reason I decided to make it, and as you can see, we're still having some technical difficulties in this one. It doesn't look like my usual videos. But I'm concerned about this because I'm wondering, does this faction that is proposing all of these things, that wants to roll back something that, to my mind, has had a benefit on Thailand, could reasonable people disagree on regulation of the product of cannabis? Sure. But the notion of rolling it back to the war on drugs era, where people were going to prison for cannabis, that's what we want to do. And then meanwhile, we want to roll out a cashless system in Thailand that the nation will ultimately have to pay for via taxes to pay back the debt that's being basically imposed on the country as a result of this so-called program, that the nation will have to go into paying this all back ultimately for a system that will surveil them and curtail their economic liberties in the future. Is that in the best interest of anyone? Not from where I'm sitting. So I'm hoping at the end of the day, cooler heads prevail on all of this stuff and people take a deep breath. And again, I'm going to presume everybody is acting in good faith ultimately, that the question posed is no. That they, at the end of the day, I think everybody is trying to have the best interest of the nation at heart. But, it's hard for me to agree with that and to believe that when I've seen, again, some of the folks from this faction, going off to the World Economic Forum, which is, this is the organization that says people around the world should own nothing and be happy. This sounds like the old notions of internationalism in the Bolshevik tradition. Again, I don't wish to get hyperbolic, but it's concerning because I'm watching the way the West has gone, and the West has not gone in a good direction. Thailand has the opportunity to basically chart her own course in these matters now moving forward as the world is changing. And I think it would be nice to see members of parliament, members of Thailand's government do things that are in the best interest of the rank and file people of Thailand, rather than pie in the sky notions of a bunch of oligarchs sitting around in Europe who all they seem to want to do is tell people what to do and tax people into oblivion and basically live off of their hard work, labor, and not give them the benefits of that hard work and labor. And then at the same time, they also want to curtail an initiative that has had a tremendous amount of benefit, not just for, big business somewhere. Again, I question, why is this dialectic of recreational use and medicinal use being applied in the context of alcohol, for example? Why is it not being applied in the context of pharmaceutical products to the same extent that it seems to be being applied to the cannabis issue? Again, this cannabis thing was something that had a great benefit to many little Thais, for lack of a better term, the little people, the rank and file Thai people. And then meanwhile, this digital wallet, to my mind, looks like something that would be, it looks like it's a benefit to the little guy, if you will. But at the end of the day, when you really break it down and understand it, this will have a tremendously detrimental impact on, again, rank and file Thai folks in the economy in the longer term. So again, I'm hoping cooler heads will prevail. Reasonable people will come to more reasonable conclusions rather than these notions that, to my mind, are only going to operate to the detriment of the vast majority of Thais moving forward.